Every one of us is a field, and it doesn't exist in, this field does not exist in space and time. Space-time exists within these fields that we are, is us. So, this changes the paradigm, right? But we need a change of paradigm, because otherwise, if we are machines, like scientism is telling us, we are going to be taken over by the machines, the artificial intelligence that people will control, powerful people will control, and through those machines they can control us if we don't change our mind of who we are. And we are not machines. The body is a machine, but it's a machine that is infinitely more complex than the computers, because it is a quantum and classical machine. It's not a machine like a computer. Just to, it's simple to understand it. Every cell of my body is a part whole of the body. What do I mean by that? Every cell of my body has the genome of the egg that created the entire organism. So every part of my body has the potential knowledge of the whole. In this case, the whole is just the body. So we are holographic. We are holographic. Knowledge of the whole. That's why epigenetics exists. 20 years ago, if you said epigenetics, you would have put into the corner as a crazy guy. Okay, now we know that epigenetic exists. Why? Because every part is a part whole. So we as human beings, we are fields which are part whole of one, the totality of what exists. Same pattern repeated at different scales. And that's because those cells remain connected with the fields, because they're made of particles. And quantum physics is telling us that particles are not objects. Particles are states of a field. They cannot be taken away from the fields. They are not separable from the fields. They are like a wave of the sea cannot be taken out of the sea. Well, existed, it wouldn't disappear, right? But an electron can appear and disappear. But it is a state of a field that appears or disappears. There is nothing more. There is no particle. But physicists, the particle physicists, but I see the particles. No, you don't see the particles. You see the effect of the states of the field on this classical world. And then you see something, but that is not a particle. That is the effect of something that was amplified in a huge number of times to give you what you call a particle. Mm. The universe is holistic. Is not made of separable parts. Everything is connected. Everything is connected from the inside. But according to most physicists, there is no inside, because everything, they think that all that exists is actually what you can measure. But that is not possible. Nobody can understand why quantum computers work, because their actual operation cannot occur in space-time. It must occur in what is called Hilbert space. But Hilbert space is supposed to be a mathematical abstraction. So how can you do operations in an abstract space of mathematics? You see, it's incoherent. But nobody wants to think deeply about this stuff, because nobody has ever taught how to think deeply about stuff. They want to solve the problem. Give me an equation, I'll solve the equations. But the equations are created by consciousness. It is consciousness that creates mathematics, not mathematics that creates consciousness. It took me 30 years to figure out that mathematics is created by consciousness, and therefore I cannot explain consciousness with mathematics. And I realized that I was trying to do the same because I was taught that way. I had to turn it around. Again, turn it around. Consciousness and free will must be taken as foundational, as a postulate, okay? But why do I say that? Because postulates ought to be self-evident. The condition to accept a postulate is a self-evident. Why is it self-evident? Because you and I are conscious. You and I know that we have limited, but we have free will. Limited, but we have it. So we know already that. How can you explain free will and consciousness with something that doesn't have either? You cannot explain it. How can you explain consciousness with math when is consciousness that created math? When can you explain free will with something that doesn't have free will? You see, it's foolish to think that, that you can explain, more with less. And I was, I had taken the same courses, I learned the same physics, and if I did not have this experience that told me that I'm more, I couldn't be here saying these things. But now I can, with this experience, I was able to invert our understanding and pointing the way to a different way to understand. So, if it's bullshit, it will be found to be bullshit. But don't say there is bullshit just because you don't want to even think about it. And that's the problem today. People, the first time they hear the wrong word from them, they shut off and they don't even want to think about it. But actually, the reason why we know is because we're conscious. The reason why we know is because we're conscious. Because consciousness is what allows us to know. Computers don't know. It's foolish to think that computers understand. They don't understand. There is no meaning in the bits. The meaning can only be quantum, can only be something that exists in the fields. It doesn't even exist in quantum information. Quantum information can only represent what we know as meaning. You see, mathematics stops there for now. Entanglement took over 30 years to prove that entanglement exists after the first experiment showed it exists. Because scientists didn't want entanglement. Einstein didn't want entanglement, so everybody, Einstein, how can Einstein be wrong? So for 50 years you couldn't do the experiments, okay? Finally, when you could do experiments, the first experiment that proved that, Alain Aspect, he got the Nobel Prize 4 years ago, what he did. Anyways, he did that, okay? Then, you did wrong, you couldn't do it, blah, blah, blah. It took more than 30 years after that to, cancel all the objections, show that the objections were not valid. And finally, everybody now has to accept that there is entanglement, but nobody can explain it. Entanglement is what connects everything from the inside. It's what allows the world to be holistic, which is already what quantum physics is saying.
Yeah. People now think that AI will cause a paradigm shift. What's your response to that? Do you think that AI
No, only this theory will cause a paradigm shift. And not because it's a theory that I developed, but only by changing the understanding of who we are can change a paradigm. In fact, the paradigm ends with AI. This paradigm of scientism ends with AI. Because AI is saying machines will be better than us, which is crazy. Why does anybody want AI, despite that, why does anybody want AI to be better than us? But AI cannot be better than us because creativity is non-algorithmic. It's not changing things randomly. And, because besides, even if AI gives you a good idea, AI doesn't know that it is a good idea. You recognize the good idea of AI.
It still needs
with your consciousness, with your understanding, with your comprehension.
Yeah, I agree. I think you would also fully agree to that quote by Nikola Tesla, right? He has this famous saying that the moment science will start studying consciousness, more will be achieved in a decade than in the whole history of science.
Absolutely, because we change the way we are. Thoughts are more important than stuff, right? I mean, from the inside you get the outside, not vice versa. And science doesn't recognize the existence of the inside because consciousness is phenomenon of the brain. The brain that makes the decision that informs your consciousness. We don't know what it is, but it doesn't have any causal power, so who cares? Once people are convinced that we are conscious, that we are fields, that when the body dies, we don't die. I mean, that's a good news, right? I mean, people want you to discharge your consciousness and experience on the computer and live forever, for Christ's sake. I mean, you know about transhumanism. I mean, Why do we need to do that? Besides, you need to have a lot of money to pay for 1 billion years of electricity to keep you alive in a computer. So this is only a good recipe for very rich people, right? To live forever on a computer. The computer sucks energy, right? So to make you live forever, you have to have a lot of money before you die to give to people that tell you that you continue to die. Are you sure that you will be continuing to die in a computer, 1,000 years later?